I'm like, what? What do you mean? Okay. I'll also post that we're live. Also, just in case you're like, what is that thing on Kara's hand? I'm using my like stitch counter ring.
Oh yeah.
Which I really love these. I have two, and I might honestly get another one because they're so nice to have. And
what is yours like? Hold on.
So it's like a little. Here, I don't know how if you're gonna be able to see this, but it's like it's got the little like.
Cool.
Oh, so it's very like manual.
Yeah, and so like when you're knitting, because a lot of times I don't want to like stop, especially if it's something where there's a lot of like counting, where there's like you know needles everywhere kind of thing. So you can just like click it like that, and you don't have to put your knitting down, and it is so nice.
Yeah, it's really nice.
I have a counter, but mine's like one of those little digital ones that you like click the button. But I also am mostly using this as a row counter, not a stitch counter. So it's more like. Yeah, like I have a place where I pause, click the button, keep going.
Yeah. I should have said I meant to say row counter for mine as well. Like I think I maybe have used it for stitches before, but it's like so what I'm doing right now, like there is a ton of counting because it's a lot of lace. I don't even know if you can see because the yarn is dark.
I can see the holes. like the design of the holes.
Yeah. And it's also on circular needles. So like when you get into a rhythm, I don't really want to like stop and put it down. And especially if it's at a part where I am counting. So yeah. And I also just got, I sized up a lot because like they don't say you're supposed to wear it on your thumb, but I just find that the most convenient. So it's like, yeah, it wasn't super clear how the sizing actually worked. So I just guessed, but this one works. So
yeah, that would make sense. Cause I feel like if it was on you, cause if you're, you're holding your needles, you could just go like this, where if it's on the finger, then you're like, have to turn your hand. I'm not even holding my knitting and I'm trying.
I guess I usually see people wear it on their pointer so they can use their thumb to like move it or to click, like whatever.
Yeah. That makes sense too.
Yeah. I guess I just find the angle easier when it's on my thumb, but like I can see how that would also work. Maybe I'll try that and see.
Oh. But I also have something weird on my hand because mine's not an actual thing though. It's like I just okay, so essentially it's that I think I was knitting too many things in a row that were like small, and when I do small things I tend to like grip the needle with my pinky finger to kind of like stabilize it, and so my pinky has been really hurting, and so I like haven't been knitting for the last 3 days in preparation for this because I knew I was going to want to knit for a couple hours while we were talking, but my hand has really been hurting. But I just made myself like a little splint thing so that I won't like, it's soft, but like I won't grip as much because it kind of like stops my finger from bending fully.
Yeah.
So this is a piece of elastic that I sewed together.
It looks very professional though. Yeah, I also have that with like really small projects because it's like you have to like almost press your hands together more than you normally
and there's a lot more like you just have to like angle it differently because you can't the needles don't stick out to the side so much. It's much more like in.
Yep. Sorry, I'm looking down. I am looking at a video of how to do something.
That's literally the whole thing. I feel like this whole time we're always looking down because we're.
And if there was any live show where that would be like expected, it's this one. So
I need to like remind myself how to do things like every time,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for me as well. And I've been knitting a long time, and I still have to do that.
I have so far only knitted projects basically that I have watched videos or done classes for, but I got a book from the library because I thought that was smarter. Was get the book, see if I liked it before paying, $27 for that. And this has like this, I was going to do a headband for my daughter, so I just bought the stuff to do a headband. It's just a simple, like this simple headband.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make her that, but it's the first time I will have ever done where you hold two yarns together, like two strands together.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a mohair and a regular DK weight. But one of the ones I want to do in here before I decide if I want to keep it, buy it, is that this is scarf where you actually like spell out the word knit. Can you see that? Where it says knit in the pattern.
That's very cool.
And I'm like, that looks so cute. So I was like, maybe I'll try that one before I make my final decision if I want to keep it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I am also counting right now. Hold on.
We didn't really say hi. I don't know if anybody's here, but hello if you're here.
Yes, say hi if you're here as we all figure out our projects. I think I have already distracted myself by talking, so I need to undo something.
Oh, no. See, this is why I went for the easy round project.
I know. This is...
Yeah.
I didn't think this was going to happen, but I really wanted to work on this one, so it's my fault.
I was hoping to be further along in my current project for this, so I'd be at a point where like I didn't have any increases to do, but
yeah,
the increases aren't that hard because there are stitch markers for everything, so I just go like, I just know where to do it, which is good.
Yeah.
Except I'm doing a different kind of increase than I did previously, and I think this kind of increase looks nice, but I don't like doing it.
Which one is it?
It's the like make one left, make one right.
Oh, the make ones are those are okay. That's one of the things I still have to chant to myself basically every time I do it. I'm like, I'll be right back. I left the front door open because it's like,
oh, that's clever. I just like stare at it for a while every time I have to do it and be like, okay, which one am I doing?
What are you making? I didn't see what you were making, Huck.
Oh yeah, I'm working on my second sweater. Hold on, let me just like get my needles in a good spot. So this one's green.
I love that green. I saw when you posted the yarn. That's like, green's my favorite color, and that's like one of my favorite shades.
Yeah. I mean, same. Green is my favorite color, and I think this is one of the best greens. I really like this. Yeah, this is just a true fact.
It's just a green, yeah.
Yeah, but like I really wanted like a real leaf green. Because I think it's pretty, but also I think it's a good color on me. So, but it's very hard to find sweaters in this kind of green because I feel like a lot of clothing right now is very like muted tones.
I'm over the beige.
Yeah, and like muted tones don't look great on me. Like I can like them sometimes depending on the color, but I don't feel like they look great on me. And I want more like bright, like certain kinds of bright colors. I also am like, I feel like either colors go very muted or they're like tropical. And I'm like, that's not what I mean when I mean bright colors. I don't want like tropical neon colors. Anyways, I have opinions about colors, but I'm very excited about this green. It took a while to like find the right kind of green, but yes. So it's just a raglan sweater. This is like my big thing about this one. Like it's a very simple sweater design, but I like the look of it. I like the shape of the sleeves and stuff. But really, I just wanted like something that was simple to do after the first sweater I made, because the first one I was like,
oh gosh,
you okay?
Sorry, my cats were having a fight on top of the ironing board, and now everything, like the ironing board fell over and it knocked something else over, and the cats went flying. So sorry.
Are they okay?
No,
everyone okay?
They ran away, but they knocked everything over.
Right, just cause chaos and leave. I also just knocked something over. This was not cats involved. This was me. Sorry. Go ahead, Huck.
Oh no, my big thing about this sweater was just the first one I did. I had like a step-by-step video tutorial I was following, as well as a pattern. So I was kind of learning how to read a knitting pattern as I was following along. And so this is the first one where I'm like, I just have the pattern. It's a very simple pattern, very simple sweater. I'm going to see if I can do it on my own. I did already make a change to the pattern.
Of course.
Because I wanted to add some German short rows in the back because it didn't have any, and I thought that it made the front look a little funny.
Yeah, that's always weird when they don't have short rows.
Yeah, because this is the thing. I always like the shape of the sweater, but there's always like this funny lip that happens in the front. And it took me a while to figure out why, and I think that it's because there were no German short rows, and so what would happen is like the neck would come up too high, but then it would get pressed down and so it would create this weird little like bump in the front. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen because I added some German short rows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also did a folded collar for the first time, so I had to look up how to do that.
Yeah, that's like the one I'm wearing.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing now. I think next at some point I want to do a drop shoulder construction because I actually really like the way drop shoulders look. But yeah, that's what I'm working on. Green sweater, and I just have to do increases as I'm going. But
yeah,
well, hopefully I will get them right, because I'm like sometimes I'm like I feel like maybe I swapped them because like on one side of the increase you have to do like make one left, and on one side of them you do make one right. I hope I did not swap these.
Yeah. I mean, as long as it's consistent, it's still gonna look good. Like it's still gonna look symmetrical. It just might be a little different, but yeah, I know.
Yeah.
The reason I may be much less chatty that today, I don't know, probably not, but I'll at least like stop us more often is because this is what I'm working on. I don't want to show too much of the pattern, obviously, for copyright, but like there's a lot of counting. And I do really like the pattern, but as I was saying before we went live, like this is not a good project to work on when you're going to be just like talking and hanging out. But I really want to finish this because I really like it and I want to be able to wear it before it starts getting warmer. I think it's easier to show when I'm at the end of a row, but like I at least can show you the color.
Yeah, it's pretty color.
Yeah, and I'm actually
I see the color. I was looking down.
Is it like a Merlot? Like
is it like
it's like a very deep sort of grape color.
Okay.
And like I really like it. And it's a cotton yarn, which I'm hoping I think will be good with it being long sleeve but also open, because like I'm hoping I'll be able to wear it like multiple seasons. That's the idea. And if not, that's what layering is for.
How do you feel about working with cotton? Because I know some people really hate cotton yarn.
I really like it. So also I am super sensitive to like scratchy or any kind of like, I don't know, like mohair I do not do. I like how it looks when other people use it, but I tend to use things that sort of mimic it because I just find it so unpleasant like to work with or to wear like at all. So I really like cotton. Like I know I've also heard a lot of people like don't like it. They think it I don't know, they don't like the feel, and I know some people say that it can like dry out their hands more, and I haven't noticed that specifically. Like I put lotion on like so but yeah, I personally really like working with it, especially on wooden needles or certain kinds of like metal needles. Yeah. So I've been liking it a lot, and I also think it's a more practical yarn choice sometimes living in California and liking to knit. It's like I need to have some fibers that are not like super warm. So
yeah, I was thinking about like I mean I do live somewhere that does get cold in the winter, not like super cold, but it gets cold in the winter. But I tend to get hot really easily, so I was wondering if I should start using. This is like a wool alpaca blend, which I like, but also I'm like, I'm wondering if this is gonna get too hot.
Yeah.
What do you use instead of mohair? Sorry.
Go ahead.
It's like I'm sure there are specific fibers that are intended to mimic it. Usually, what ends up happening is I just sort of look for something that has like the vibe and the overall look. And I look at what the fibers are, and if it's like, okay, there's not actual mohair in this, I'm good. like I don't think I'm allergic to it. I'm just like super sensitive to.
A lot of people find it itchy, I've heard.
Yes, extremely itchy for me as well. I also, that's why I tend to use like superwash wool. I guess that's apparently, I don't know. There's some like yarn snobs who are like, that's not real wool. You're not really like making like the true fabric and like all this. But I don't like.
There's always somebody with opinions that aren't needed.
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't need your opinions.
Exactly. So yeah, I also tend to go for superwash because for one thing I like how colors show up on it better.
I've
But
heard
I
that
also
it like
just like the
tends to be
feel.
more vibrant. There's something about the way it's
Yeah.
treated that like the colors come up brighter.
Yeah. And I never personally like machine wash any of my knits except for like dishcloths and stuff. So it's not that I need the actual superwash properties. It's just that it's like a good, like I feel like the other qualities are good for my pickiness. Hello, Nina.
Yeah. Where I definitely want to learn how to make sweaters with really thick wool. Tomorrow it's supposed to be the feels like of -30.
Oh, geez.
Fun times.
Yeah.
Today it felt warm out because it was 8 degrees. And
oh my God.
I was like, I don't even need my hat or my gloves because the last week has been below 0 with like wind.
Yeah.
And today it was sunny and 8 degrees. And I was like, it's like a heat wave.
Yeah. Beach time. I mean, you did really pick an excellent time to get into fiber crafts.
Yes. Well, it's kind of part of the point. Like when we moved here, I was like, I need to start knitting because I need to like knit all the things to wear in winter.
Yeah, it's also a good hobby if you're like stuck inside in the winter and it keeps you warm. If you're knitting something large and it's just like sitting on your lap, it definitely keeps you warm.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I want to at least get to the end of the row in a reasonable time so I can better show what I'm working on, because otherwise it's just like a hunk of fabric. Like it's hard to see.
Is it a long row? Like, is it pretty?
Yeah, so I'm making a top and I actually have divided for the sleeves. So it's actually shorter than it was, but it's still like the entire top part of the sweater. So I'm actually getting really close to being done because I just need to I'm like almost done with the front half of the split. And then I just have to do the same on the back and sleeves and I'm done. So
cool.
Exciting. If I can count, of course.
I was gonna say, are you? Am I able to put comments up, or are you? Yeah, I guess you're the only one that can put comments.
Oh, yes. Nina said, "I'm gonna have the projects I wanted to make for autumn ready when spring starts." I swear, Nina, that happens to me every time. Like I always think that I've planned ahead well enough, and I never have. So I am with you. I should look at the weather predictions half a year from when I start a project. Yeah. I feel that. I know. I do the same. And it's happened multiple times, so you'd think at some point I would get better at it, or I would at least know myself enough to be like, don't start that now. You're not going to finish. But here I am.
I guess
go ahead.
I was just saying, it's a good thing that the seasons just keep coming around.
There you go.
How lucky.
Yep.
I think my strategy is I'm just going to knit things for cold weather year round. So then I don't have to like sync up with the weather. Because also like, I've never really found any knitting patterns for warm weather things that I have wanted to make, like, I don't know. Summer just doesn't feel like a time to wear knitwear for me.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of has to be for me out of necessity.
Right. Yeah.
And there are like things, I think lace. Like my sister-in-law, she usually makes herself something like with a lace kind of lighter weight top. Well, and we also, our summers are often in the 60s, so we can easily
that's just sweater weather.
Yeah. I mean, it does get warm certain weeks, but almost every evening it's going to get down in the 60s. So
yeah, but yeah, where I am, like in the summer, at the hottest it probably gets to like 100 degrees, but in the summer it's probably more like in the 90s. And I just like, I don't know, I just haven't found anything that's like a knitwear pattern that I'm like, oh, that's something I would wear in the summer.
Yeah.
I do think I do think it is harder to find things that are really what you're looking for, just because fewer people, I feel like, design patterns for warm weather.
Yeah.
I have like a couple, like I made one like tank top that I love, and I actually want to make it in other colors because I loved it so much. So it's like when I find something that I do really like, I'm like, I want to make this like 4 more times. But I guess, yeah, thinking to how long it takes me to find a pattern that I'm really excited about, I guess it does take longer when it's like summer style.
Yeah, I've also had some like knit things that I've like bought, but were knit fabric that were supposed to be for summer, like knit tank tops, and I just never wear them. Because I like, not that I don't have anything against them. It's just for me, like, it just feels weird to wear it's so like in my brain that like knit things are for cold weather. And so it just feels weird to like wear a knit tank top. I don't know. This is just like a thing in my own head. It's not like
Wonder if you could use it as like a layering piece, like with a cardigan. Like wear your knit tank top with a cardigan over it so you still see it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or you could just make things for the winter. That's fine too.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'll get greatly inspired over the summer and be like, you know what? I will make something.
I'm just like super inspired. Did you all see Mara's like video where she talked about all the things she had knitted last year?
Mm-hmm.
No, I should do that. I feel bad. Like I feel like I haven't been following her channel as much because of the Robin Hobb content.
Yeah, well, she got really into knitting last year and just decided to like make her own sweaters. And she was going through everything she knitted in a year, and I'm like, did you have like a year that's twice as long as mine? Because you made like 9 sweaters.
Yeah.
I was so impressed. She made so much stuff. And
yeah,
I liked how she was like, well, I don't really know how to do this technique. I'm just going to do it. Kind of like Huck. Like just learn on the fly.
Yeah, that's kind of what I watched her video and I was like, yeah, I feel like we have kind of a similar approach where it's just be like, well, I'm going to just like, she in her first year of knitting, made a bunch of sweaters.
Yeah.
We also did like color work, did like cabling, did all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, I feel like I have a very like, I'm going to do a couple of plain sweaters and then I'm going to learn how to do color work. I'm going to learn how to do all this other stuff because I think we have a similar approach to these kind of things where it's like, just go for it and hope for the best. Like, I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah. I was like, because I took that cabling class for this thing and I thought for sure that this was going to be so hard. And then I was like, I love it. It was so
really good.
I am a big proponent of cables because a lot of people hate them and I find them so satisfying. Like, I don't feel like they're overly complicated if you just like, I don't know, if you like take a minute to actually like look at the directions, like where you're supposed to like hold the stitches and stuff. So I am so happy that you're a fan of cables.
I loved it because I thought, well, one, I didn't feel like it was that complicated once you got into the class and like, or once you follow the pattern and see what you're doing. And then it's like you see it going and you can tell, oh, I've done 1 and now I've done 2 and now I've done 3. And like,
it's so satisfying. Hello, Kay. Working on bookmarks today. That's very cool. Are you like painting or coloring? Like, I'm nosy about your bookmarks. Some good reminders here about hydrating and taking meds, stretching. Yeah.
I have matcha over here.
I think that
I'll take your advice and hydrate.
Yeah. I don't have an actual hydrating thing to drink right now. I'm still on coffee.
Well, technically coffee does have water. So
it does, but
and caffeine, but whatever.
Fabric bookmarks, very cool. Thanks, Nina. Yes, I do have very long hair right now. So very cool. Yes. Okay, I think.
I forgot. I also, because my hand was hurting from like gripping my needles the wrong way, I've been trying to remember to stretch like before and during, like while I'm knitting, and I forgot to before I start, so I'm gonna do it now.
It's a good reminder.
Yeah, I was just realizing that I think I finally have to give up and get a small like portable mouse for my laptop. Not for all the time, but for sometimes, because I feel like with all the knitting I do, I'm gonna seriously mess up my hands if I also am not using something. I don't know. Like, I like using a trackpad. I find it, like, unless I'm doing very specific things, I find it just as easy as a mouse.
Yeah.
So I've resisted it for a long time. And I think I finally have to give in because I don't want to screw up my hands and ruin crafting for myself. So.
Yeah.
I made book bags last week. That's so cool.
Cool. I just got at work a ergonomic mouse because I felt the same way. I'm like, because it reverberates all the way up into your shoulder, you know, like when you're using a mouse, like in a certain way. And so I'm like, well, with having just had shoulder surgery, I'm like, maybe I need to like start using a better mouse.
Yeah.
Yep. We're getting older. We have to think of these things.
I know. Ergonomic.
That is part of why today I'm sitting on my couch instead of on the floor, because I was like, I mean, I love sitting on the floor, but it will hurt my back eventually.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is getting like really heavy on my needles. I'm like, maybe I need to finish it sooner.
Yeah.
Because I think I used a bulky size yarn instead of a worsted weight.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just a little heavier.
Yep.
Yeah.
Back when I started this project a year ago, I didn't really know the differences between the different yarns.
Yeah.
I am honestly, like, I'm only recently learning, like since I've started knitting, learning the difference between different yarn weights. Because when I was crocheting for years, I did not at all pay attention to yarn weight. Mm-hmm. But also I wasn't crocheting a lot of garments, so it didn't really matter. It just was like, oh, like especially if I'm making like a plushie, I just would be like, well, the plushie is just going to be bigger because I'm
yeah.
Did you guys introduce what you're working on?
I don't know if we officially did. Kelly, do you want to start off?
Yeah, I think I was doing this last time. I'm still working on this cowl. Scarfy cowl thing, whatever. That I really only do, like, I haven't touched it since last time we did it because it's like a mindless thing I could do in a round, you know. So maybe I'll finish it today.
Yeah.
Is a cowl just like kind of like the neck of a turtleneck, essentially?
So it's like a scarf, but like circular, where it just sits at your neck. But it's not like, you know how like a circular scarf can kind of like wrap and go down further. This just like sits at your neck.
Okay, because that's what I was thinking. So this sweater that I'm working on, I did a crew neck, but most of the versions I've seen have like a turtleneck, but I don't really like wearing turtlenecks, but I like the way this design looks with the turtleneck. So I was thinking of making a matching cowl that I could just put on if I wanted the turtleneck look, but then if I end up being like, I hate how this feels, I can just take it off.
Yeah, I am like that too, where sometimes I can't handle a turtleneck all day long because it's like after a while I'm like, it's nice to just have something you can throw on when you're cold, take it off if it's getting in too much.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I was like, I was never really sure what like a cowl was. So I think that's what I'm planning to make, essentially, is like a matching cowl for this so that it'll look like it's part of the sweater.
Yeah, so this will just be like, you can see. I might not even be done soon. Like, it seems like it's kind of...
Yeah, it looks like a good size.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I've been needing this lately because it's kind of the kind of weather where you want something on your neck when you're outside. So I should finish it so I can actually wear it.
Yeah. I am actually almost at the end of a row and it'll be a good time to show. So I'll do that in a minute. Discussion about, bags are holding lots of books. Sleeves are the small cushioned bags to protect books, and then covers are to protect the covers. So, cowls can also be a large infinity scarf that, I've seen some cowls that are much longer that are like those infinity scarves or like circular ones.
Yeah, I usually have thought of the word cowl meaning something that had a hood. That's why I was kind of like,
interesting.
Like, what are we talking about? Yeah.
Okay.
I think like in this book over here, they have one that they call it a balaclava, but I've never seen it called that when it's just like, it's like around the neck and then it goes up. But I always thought like when it's a balaclava that it kind of like comes up all the way, kind of your eyes show. Is what
interesting.
Was. But in this book, it's showing it as like this thing, like on the back. They're calling this a balaclava.
Yeah, that seems more like a hood or a bonnet or something. Yeah. But I think that I have seen a lot of people calling that kind of thing a balaclava. But I agree that I thought it was something that covered. It was like a ski mask.
Yeah, like when you're skiing.
Yeah.
But this looks like amazing. Like this thing that they're calling a balaclava, like
that's very cute.
It is nice. Cute, yeah.
Because it's like a hat and a scarf in one.
Yeah, and it looks like it has enough like weight and coverage that it would actually keep you warm, but it still looks like a cute accessory. It's not just like I put my head in a knitted bag. Like
yeah, and a lot of times when you wear a balaclava, like an actual ski one, you look like you're robbing a store.
I know. Okay, I associate that with with robbing a convenience store or something. It's like I know people actually wear them, but whenever you see them in like TV and movies, it's like nobody's ever wearing a ski mask because they're actually skiing.
Yeah. Well, and obviously I live in a climate where people do wear balaclavas a lot, but like I feel like a lot of people around here wear more colorful ones. I mean, there are people that just wear their black one, but like especially the kids, they have ones that are like bright pink or whatever because they're having to wear them like every day at recess.
Yeah. Okay, so here is what mine looks like.
Wow, it's pretty.
Oh, it's like a V. That's nice.
Yeah, like a chevron kind of.
Yes, I am really happy with how it's looking, and so that is also motivating me to want to finish it. So.
And you said it'll have sleeves or a tank top?
No, it has sleeves. I'll see. I'm always like a little nervous about how much showing a pattern book is okay online.
I guess as long as you don't show the instructions, but
right. And I even didn't show I just showed like a small part of the chart. So this is kind of what it's going to look like.
Oh, neat.
Oh, it is a sweater.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. For some reason, I thought you were doing a shawl or something, but yes.
Okay. No.
I like the color you picked.
Thank you. I think it's going to be
baby blue does not look good on my skin tone.
Yeah, I think it looks nice obviously on the model, and it does show off the pattern really well, and it's a pretty color. I could think of other things I would like to do it in, but I kind of wanted to have a darker top. We have more discussion of cowls. Yeah, I also remember reading
that's what I was thinking of.
It came from monk's cowls.
Yeah. I made a monk costume for a Shakespeare play once, and it had a cowl, and that's what is in my head as to what cowl means.
Yeah, this is so funny because I always have to stop and think before I say the word balaclava, because it's like my mouth wants to say baklava, which is it's a dessert, and it is delicious, but it's not what we're talking about.
Right.
So I'm glad that's not just me, Kay.
Yeah. So it sounds like people, have taken things that were originally one thing and changed. Because I've seen a lot of cowl patterns that do not have a hood, but it makes sense that was what it was originally made for. So I don't know if it's just over time people just change the names of things, we're oh well, I'm just gonna call this a cowl now.
Yeah, I mean things evolve, so I guess that makes sense. But also I don't know. Sometimes like it's like, oh good, the like, you know, word usage evolves. And then sometimes I get frustrated because I'm like, well, now I don't know what you're talking about. Like there's this person that I've seen who, I don't know, does one of those people who like thrifts for other people, you know, like people will say like, oh, this is what I want, and then they go thrifting. It's like a personal stylist but thrifting, and like I think that's a cool idea, but then sometimes the way she describes like the details of the garments when she's showing them calls everything ruffles, and I'm like, those are pleats, those are not ruffles.
Yeah,
what are you talking about? And like it's not a big deal, but it still like annoys me.
Yeah.
I think I moved my stitch marker wrong. I have to figure out where my stitch marker goes. Okay.
I can't tell if my kid is screaming in a good way or screaming in a bad way. But
it's a fun question.
Dad is up there. It's fine.
He can handle that. Yeah, and I feel like when it's something like this, like Kay saying, you know, Kleenex is the brand, but a lot of people use that word as the object tissue. I feel like at least with that, it's like a one-to-one thing. So it's like a brand name becomes known as the object that it is.
Yeah.
But I do also find it confusing where it's like the actual, like it's a very specific definition that is differentiated from other things. And then when you start like combining them, then you sort of like lose that specificity. I don't know if that makes sense, but kind of like you were saying, Huck, it's like pleats, like if ruffles became like a word for any kind of, you know, gathering in a fabric, like that would mean like, okay, well, what do I do?
Also calling ruching ruffles. Yeah. Like ruching is not ruffles.
Yeah.
Because also this is the other thing, not that it's like the most important thing, I guess, but I was like, well, if people are watching this and they want to find something like that, if they Google ruffles, that's not what is going to come up if they're looking for ruching or they're looking for pleating, like, you know?
Yeah.
Not that this person is trying to be educational, so like it's not necessarily like you're miseducating people. Right. Still, it's
you're ruining the youth.
Words have no meaning.
What did you say, Kelly?
I said words have no meaning.
Yeah. It is funny, like sometimes my dad will like complain about like not, I don't know how to differentiate it from what we're talking about, but it's like, for example, the like curation, and like a lot of times when I hear that used by like our age group, it's like I hear a lot of people talking about like curating your space and like your social media feed and like all of that. So I view that as a different usage than like being a museum curator, but still a valid usage. It's just like now there are sort of two fields, I guess, that you use a specific word in. My dad does not like that because he's an archaeologist, and he's like, that's not what curating is. And I always think about, for one of my English AP exams, do you guys remember they would have like those long like primary sources for some of the questions? And I still remember one of them was this like man from, I think it was like the 1700s, like basically bitching about the youth ruining language. And I'm like, this has literally been happening like through all of history, I think. So I just think that's funny. And obviously we all have, like, I know I have words like that I'm inconsistent about, where I'm like, okay, but this one bugs me. I think we all have stuff like that, but
I definitely have, like, there are things that I'm like, it annoys me every time people like use this word wrong, but then like I for sure use certain words wrong, you know? Or like people pronouncing dark academia as academia, and I'm like, this is like not a macadamia nut. Like, like
I would read a dark macadamia.
And it's like, it doesn't matter, but I do correct it in my head every time I hear it. Yep. Hey, bud.
That's funny. Maybe I feel like I always thought people said it like that, dark academia, because they just want to sound fancy. But
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe
does that sound fancier? I don't think so, but
I don't know. I think I was just like, well, maybe just people want to sound like they're different.
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Who knows?
But maybe that's how they pronounce it somewhere. I don't know. I have been doing that hat on like small needles, and now I'm using these. These are 11s, and I feel like they're humongous.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. I went from doing when I was working on socks and had like those teeny tiny needles to working on these, which like these aren't even big needles. This is like a 3.75 millimeter. Like these aren't particularly large, but in comparison, they feel so much bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are like? I'm not good at. Oh, so these would be 8 millimeters. I'm not good at like knowing what the millimeters, and that part of the stick is rubbing it off. So
I use the US size number.
The size numbers just don't make sense to me, so I just stick with the millimeters.
I mean, I know that the millimeters is more accurate, but like all of my sort of knowledge about like relative needle size is based on numbers. Like I know that like what an 8 is usually used for, and I have no idea what the millimeter is. Like I pull up a chart if I need to, and like I said, I recognize that it is a better and more precise system to use millimeters.
I mean, you do you. It just like it's just what one makes more sense in my head than the other, but as long as it works for you.
Well, I think
the numbers are there for a reason, Yeah. It makes sense to somebody.
And I think if we actually used millimeters, it would make much more sense in our minds too.
Right.
But I don't think I fully know how big a millimeter is or a centimeter, because we don't.
No, when I still have to like do conversion, like I have to figure it out if I'm reading a pattern and trying to figure out sizing, and it's all in like millimeters or centimeters, and I'm like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, which I feel like we should know. Like,
yeah,
it would be much smarter if we did.
I will say, like in our defense, though, I'm pretty sure that like the metric system versus like American measurement, I think it's one of those things that we actually kept from England, and they changed it, and then they're like, oh my god, Americans are the only ones who don't do the smart thing. And it's like, you guys did it first. Like,
well, isn't it also that like their American accents are actually more similar to British accents when like they actually came over here, and then it's like the British accent has evolved away from what it sounded like,
to the point where like there are actually quite a few like theater experts and like performers and linguists and like all of that who say that Shakespeare actually sounds better in an American accent, or better in the sense that like
more accurate to what it would have sounded like.
Yeah, and also that so much of it is about like the sound of the language, and so it sounds like better in the sense that when he was writing things and seeing them performed, he was like picturing the sounds being said a certain way.
Right. That's
interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah. If you guys find that interesting, I have to really recommend The Prodigal Tongue by, I think Lynn Murphy is the name. I'll like put the but it's a nonfiction book. I found it so interesting and readable. Like I don't read books on linguistics really, but I think just if you find anything about language like interesting, I think it's really good. I think this is how you spell her name, but I'll check in a second. Yeah, and it's really like cool and interesting to see like where things came from that I didn't even know had like any kind of history really, like she also talks about a lot of different phrases like soccer, for example, and how once again America's like the only one who calls it that. Everybody else calls it football. That's another thing that we actually took from England, and then England changed and made fun of us. Like,
They're teaching us
Bully.
about millimeters and centimeters
Yeah.
in the
Yeah, like I understand it conceptually, but then I still don't know what that means until I like do a conversion.
yeah.
Well, so like if I need to, like I have like on my measuring tape that I use when I knit, like it has millimeters and centimeters. And so if it gives the instructions in that and it doesn't include like inches, then I use the measuring tape, you know, but it's like I don't have a good picture in my head when they're like knit for 60 centimeters. And I'm like, I could not tell you what that looks like, but I can measure it. Like that's fine.
Mm-hmm. My doctor's office has started to do where, you know how they always weigh you when you come in for whatever, and they've started to use grams, kilograms, whatever. And so I'm wondering if they are doing that so that people don't go like, oh, I've gained weight or whatever, you know, like so people don't like get obsessive about, because I don't like when I see that, I'm like, that means nothing to me. I have no idea if that's bigger or smaller than it was last time.
Right. I think you're right. I think that would be, because like really the people who need to know that number are like the doctor and you know like
so it's like they don't want people to like worry about it, like, oh
yeah. Or I also appreciate it's like if they say like, oh, do you want to know the number, you know, like sometimes they'll be like, do you want to know, and sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Like it doesn't really, I like it when they treat it like it's not a big deal, but they also understand that it might feel like a big deal, you know, so they want to make sure that you're comfortable. So I like that.
They're also like, do not have me take off my giant coat and boots when they weigh me. And I'm like, well, I don't want to know what that number is because I'm wearing probably 10 pounds of extra gear on my body while you are weighing me, like, because my coat is heavy.
I recently got a new like puffer coat. But it's actually a very similar green to this. And I love it that it's like this really vibrant green. It's also a very nice coat, but like I love the color.
There's not enough bright colors and coats. Like I wanted a bright color, but it's like they don't sell very many in bright colors. It's like, but
yeah.
Or like if you're getting an adult coat, you want to wear brown, and it's like no, I'm so fun.
Yeah, it's like brown, black, navy. Those are your options here, and I'm like, but I want something fun.
Yeah.
There, a lady I work with because I work at a nature center, so people are outside. One of the ladies has this like bright red, like. It's one of the puff, like the down coats that's all the way down to your like calves. And so she's just bright red from head to toe almost. And I love it because I'm like, the kids can always find her.
No, that is a thing I thought about because like I'm always walking Merlin and I have a raincoat and my raincoat is like kind of a, you know, like army green, olive green kind of color because that was what they had. And I always feel like, oh, if I'm wearing this on like a rainy, gloomy day, I'm really not visible in this color. But like my new puffer coat that's like a bright leaf green, I feel very visible. And it is also one of the ones that like goes all the way down. It's very long. And it has like a hood and everything and it's very, very warm. Oh no, did I just drop a stitch?
Oh no.
No, okay. I think I just accidentally slipped it onto my other needle.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, there we go.
I have to decide if I want this to be my last row.
What does your heart tell you, Kelly?
I don't know. I was going to compare it to the other one I made because I felt like the other one I made was too short. Like it didn't lay very nice. So I think I'll grab the other one and compare it because I wanted this one to be a little, that's part of why I used the bulky weight. I wanted it to sit a little more flouncy, you know, and not be so tight.
Yeah. I like, as much as I know it's important to like, you know, try on stuff as you make it, like as much as possible. I feel like I do that and it still is not always, I don't know, like I'll be like, yes, this is a good length, and then I like cast off and finish it, and I'm like, this is too short. Like, so what happened there?
Do you block stuff?
I do. Like, I only just started doing it, so I feel like I'm still not very good at it. So that could absolutely be part of the issue.
Well, also, if you feel like if something's too short, blocking can like stretch it.
Yeah, and that has happened to me before, so I know that can like sort of help if it's a small amount like that. Yeah. I have looked up so many like blocking tutorials. Like, I understand how it works, but when I go to do it, I'm like, it doesn't feel like I'm doing it right.
I mean, I've only blocked one sweater, so I don't know. But I mean, when I did block my one sweater, it definitely stretched a lot more than I was expecting.
Yes.
But I still am really glad that I blocked it because it completely changed like the drape of the sweater, because previously it had zero drape. Like, it was oversized, but it didn't drape at all. And it just kind of like sat in a weird way that I was like, that's not a very flattering shape. And then I blocked it and I was like, this is very large, but it has a really nice like movement to it now.
Yeah. Did you, when you made your sweater, because I'm trying to figure out before I start my sweater to really understand it. Like, I'm reading this book and they're like saying that this sweater should have 3 to 5 inches of ease. So does that mean when you see the like different sizes in the pattern that you should take like your bust size and add 3 to 5 inches and pick that one?
They should tell you in the pattern if the measurements are like
positive
the finished measurements.
Ease.
Sorry, what?
They call it positive or negative ease.
Well, because this is like, it says like the finish. So the finish would be like, that's already the ease added in, right?
Yeah, the finished measurements should be with ease added in.
Okay, because this is saying recommended ease 5 inches. And then it said finished measurements and it has like the chest circumference. So if I'm like a 40-inch chest, I want to pick the one that's like
45. Yeah. Sometimes they'll also tell you if the finished measurements are like before or after blocking, because that can also change like how large it is.
Yeah, because that's what I'm like worried about. I want it to fit if I'm going to spend all this time making a sweater. Right.
Yeah. That's why people always say you're supposed to gauge swatch, but I never do. I hate it with a passion. But I also accept then that sometimes if something doesn't turn out right, I'm like, this is on me, and I know that.
Then it becomes a gift. You can find the person that fits the sweater.
Yeah.
I mean, I like a little extra like positive ease. I like things to be a little bigger and more drapey. Yeah. So I don't mind if things end up being bigger. But also I'm trying to figure out how to like find the correct size, because I think the first one I did, one, I think I sized up too much, and two, it just like stretched a lot more. And I also like made the yoke too long. So it ended up, the armpit ended up way too low. Which I did not really understand. Like I kind of understood what was going to happen. And then I was like, that's more than I was expecting.
Did I really understand?
Somebody. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say the other thing about blocking, and like Huck, you mentioned how much it like changed the drape of the fabric. That's another reason that I don't think I'm doing it right, because I don't feel like I get a drastic difference in how the fabric looks after I block. And when I have seen other people like demonstrate it, like before and after, sometimes I can see the difference they're talking about, and sometimes I can't. So I'm like, maybe I just don't know what it looks like, but I don't know.
I may have forgotten an increase.
Let's have a pause for counting.
Nah, that's fine. I'm just gonna knit backwards, like undo my stitches and figure it out. Not that I'm an expert on blocking, but
with your
one question is, so like what have you been using like mostly like, have you used natural fibers when you've been blocking things, or are they like synthetic fibers when you've blocked things?
Natural.
Okay. Yeah. Are you wet blocking or steam blocking?
Wet blocking.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out, is this a stitch?
No, you're fine. Okay. I do that. Yeah, I do that all the time. Okay. I'm like, is this a yarn over, or did I just like do something?
Okay, I think I did forget an increase, so now I'm gonna add it. Okay, when you're blocking something, what are you doing?
So I like put a tiny bit of the like wool soap in some like room temperature water. I put the garment in there for, I feel like, I don't remember. It's usually around, I think, 10 minutes, like whatever they recommend is what I usually do. And then I carefully take it out, and I don't wring it. I like squeeze it out with a towel like you're supposed to. And then I lay it out on, I even got like blocking mats for it, which are basically just like those.
Yeah, I have blocking mats.
Yeah, it's funny because they look exactly like the foam like block mats that little kids use. So I'm like, I think you guys just repurposed these, but okay. Yeah. So I lay it out on one of those, or however many I need, and then I put in the little like pin clusters. Like the ones I use are the ones that have them like all in a line. And it's like,
I want some of those. I do have the little T-pins.
Yeah, I don't use those because I'm really worried about my cats getting into them. And
when I blocked my sweater, I had to do it in my bathroom because it was the only place that I could like close all the doors and Merlin couldn't get in.
Yes. Yeah, and so that's pretty much all I do for.
Do you like shape it or like stretch it at all when you do that?
I do a little. I think that's the part that I don't really understand yet, because I understand, like, I know that you're supposed to like stretch out the lace part a little bit if it has it, because that you want it to like be open. And so I do that, and that's fine. But I don't really get how much stretch you're supposed to do in terms of how the fabric looks, because I know that like you want to block to measurements supposedly, but I don't know how that like is affected by, like, basically I don't know when it's not a question of something being the right measurements. I'm like, well, how much do I stretch it? Like, when what is it supposed to, like, it just doesn't ever feel like, no matter what I try, it doesn't ever really feel like it did a lot. I don't know.
It's interesting. I don't know. I mean, I think to some extent, like with mine, I do feel like maybe I stretched it too much, but also I think stretching it is part of what gave it the drape that it had, because one of the issues that it had, especially like at the bottom, was that it was a little bit like, it was kind of not tight, but it was just more fitted at the bottom. And I stretched out the bottom and like the ribbing especially, and that made it much more like hung much more loosely and had more like drape to it. So I don't know. I mean, that sounds like you're, wet block. That's all the steps I know about wet blocking.
Yeah.
I wonder, like, do you feel like it's getting fully saturated in the 10 minutes that it sits in the water?
Yeah, I think it does. And I even sometimes do it a little longer. Like, I have seen some of the people who, like, where the guides I've looked up, where like if they include it in a pattern book, I appreciate hearing even experienced knitters do things like this, because they'll mention like, if you forget it overnight, it's fine. I've done that. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I don't think it's like an issue with soaking, but I don't know.
I don't know. Actually, I have a question for you about knitting. Maybe, I don't know if you'll have an answer for this, but I've been trying to figure out, I feel like my stitches are like doing a weird thing. I don't know if anyone else would notice this, but when I look at my stitches, I feel like, they're supposed to be like a V, right? That goes like this. But I feel like mine look like this. where there's like the straight column and then like a diagonal one. And I can't figure out why it's doing that.
Let me look something up because I think I know what that means, but I want to check.
Okay, because I couldn't Google this to figure out like why. Because like
you're saying they RV and then to the side, or you're saying they all veer to the side?
They all like it ends up like each row or each column of stitches is like there's a straight column and then there's a bunch of little like V's going into the or little like diagonals going into the column. So my whole column is like this shape instead of this shape.
Okay. I think okay, so I think what it sounds like, and I checked this, and I think that's what it is. I'll send you the link.
Okay,
on Instagram. I think you might be twisting your stitches.
Really?
Maybe. Like that's at least the picture they show kind of looks like what you describe, but obviously you're in the better position.
It's possible. I have been trying to like figure out if there was a point where I was wondering if I was twisting my stitches because of something else, but then I watched a bunch of videos about how to do this and I was like, I don't think I'm twisting them, but it's also very possible that I am. I have no idea.
Yeah, and I definitely could be wrong about this. Like that's something I know that a lot of people who start knitting, it's like you do that without realizing it. And I don't think I did. I had other issues when I started. So it's not like I have firsthand experience of like what that feels like or what it looks like. But I have seen a lot of people talk about it. So
it's very
best. So I did send a link.
Okay, thank you. I will look at that.
Because I think Mara even talked about that in her video, that she was twisting her stitches, and I didn't know what that meant. And then now I just looked at a picture, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I remember her talking about that, and I did that was one of the things that also made me go like, oh, I wonder if I twist my stitches. And then I went and watched a bunch of tutorials of like how to knit, and I was like, I don't think that I am, because I think I'm doing what they're doing. Mm-hmm. But you never know. I'm learning from YouTube tutorials, so it's very possible I'm doing something wrong.
And then I'm looking at these, I'm like, I hope I'm not twisting my stitches. I don't think I look like that. But mine is going, I'm only having two, like this one is specifically is only 2 knit, 2 purl rows. So it's kind of hard to tell when you don't have a bunch of knit in a row,
Yeah. Let me finish this pattern, repeat, and then
I wonder if my hat, because I think there's sections that might be more knitting. No, I think the cable makes it too hard to tell. I don't know.
Okay, so the other thing is that like there's a lot of stitches in knitting that involve doing things differently than a normal knit stitch. So I think that can also make it confusing. Like, so like Huck, you're talking about doing all these like make right and make left and all of that. Those are twisting. Like that is something that you have to. So I think that can also make it kind of hard to tell if that is something that you're doing. But
yeah, I think at this point, even if I am twisting my stitches, I'm probably just going to keep doing it throughout the rest of this because I don't want it to change. For sure. Like I'm not undoing all of this, and so I'm like, this is going to have texture.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and
so I don't think anyone will notice but me. It's not like so egregiously noticeable.
Yeah. There's also like I actually really like doing what's called a twisted rib stitch.
Oh, I've done that. My first sweater had that for like the ribbon.
Yeah, I think the one that I was wearing had that as well, if I remember correctly. But like that is an example of like you are deliberately twisting the stitches for an aesthetic reason, and I like it.
And like that, I understand the difference between that kind of intentional twist when you're like going through the back loop as opposed to what I'm doing. But I mean, it's possible I could still be twisting even like, because sometimes I wonder if I'm doing my like I'm going through the front loop, but sometimes I wonder if like with the working yarn, if I'm like looping it the wrong way around my needle.
Yeah. Let me know. Like I would be I'm very nosy about this now. I'm curious. So let me know what you figure out, if like that link.
I will.
But
yeah. Because also I think that the way that I knit is like kind of a combination of things, because it's like sort of continental because I'm holding the working yarn in my left hand, but I'm not picking. Like I am still like throwing the yarn over the needle, but from the left side instead of the right side.
And you're left-handed, right?
No, I'm right-handed.
Oh, why did I think you were left-handed for a second? I don't know. Just invented a fun fact about you.
But like I'm still like, you know, lifting my hand and like throwing it, but from the other side like this. Yeah. I don't know if you can see this at all, but that's how I knit.
I cannot, but I believe you. Yeah, I don't know.
But yes, I will check that out, and I will let you know if that like clears anything up.
Yeah, because that's the only thing I can really think of off the top of my head that sounds like maybe what you're describing.
Yeah.
But like I said, this is sort of like armchair diagnosis because like I don't know.
I mean, it's better than what that's why, but like I don't know, you know more about knitting than I do, so I was like, I'll ask you as my resident knitting expert. Like if you don't have an answer, that's fine, but it's better than me trying to figure it out because I don't even know what to Google.
Yeah.
Well, do you have a yarn store in town?
I do. I have one. There are actually two that are sort of close. The closer one is harder to get to. But yeah, I guess I could go ask them.
Because they might be able to just like look at it and be like, oh yeah, this is whatever.
That's true. That would require talking to strangers.
Yeah. But at least they're like yarn strangers and not like going to Home Depot and asking the people there. That always like, I'm like, nope, I'll just figure it out what screw I need.
No, I was like, when I was first looking at this pattern and I was saying how like it would create this weird little like lip in the front, I was considering asking the people at the yarn store if they could help me figure out why it was doing that and how to prevent it. But then I think I figured it out on my own. Hopefully I did. We'll find out later.
Yeah. I end up asking them a lot of questions because I just don't think I don't catch on to things quickly when it comes to like crafts like this. Like I just get confused because there's a lot of terminology and there's a lot of like different kinds of yarn and all this stuff. And so I'll just go in and I'll be like, can you tell me what they're talking about? And it's like, not necessarily the whole pattern, but like, what weight yarn are they discussing? And like, what is a comparable yarn? Because I don't want to necessarily buy this specific yarn that they're using in this pattern. Like, but can you tell me what else I can use? Like, describe this to me.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Nina. Fabric store that's 3 minutes away is closing.
Is it a Joann's? Because Joann's is closing.
I was wondering, yeah.
Like all Joann's are closing?
I think 500 out of 800 Joann's, but those other ones are probably going to go soon too.
Wow. I wonder if it's just people are buying their stuff online or what?
Joann's, I think, has gone bankrupt multiple times. But they have been, but then I think they get like bought by a new person and like, they keep going. But this time it did not happen. So they're kind of like liquidating a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I think, Kelly, you were just talking about like, terminology and like sort of having to catch up with that. I probably mentioned this. I'm sure I've mentioned this in a previous sprint, but like I have sort of a similar thing because I am also like self-taught, but through like books and patterns and all of that. Like, so I haven't really, like once in a while I'd be in a position where like I had like a real life knitter that I could ask something, but for the most part, I've just been sort of like figuring it out as well. And something that I'm finding is that like I do know, I'm pretty good at knowing like terminology or like what to look up. Like I've been knitting long enough that I can kind of figure out, like if it's something I don't know, a lot of times I can at least get into the general area of what I'm supposed to know and sort of like Google it. Mm-hmm. But the exception to that, I'm finding that something I haven't picked up on because I haven't had a lot of like real life demonstration, I guess, is I don't sort of instinctively know the parts of a pattern that they don't write the way that somebody who has been taught by a person how to knit would. So like in a pattern, like when they would say knit even until 8 inches or something like that, like I didn't know what that meant. And I think
when they say what?
Like knit even for 8 stitches. I was like,
what does knit even mean?
So what it apparently means, I think, is I had to look up multiple things trying to figure this out, and I'm hoping I remember correctly. But I think knit even is continue knitting in whatever pattern you've established, but without increasing or decreasing. So if you were doing increases or decreases with the pattern, you would ignore that part. But like that's something where it's like I didn't have that instinctive like knowledge. And when I was trying to look up what does knit even mean, I had a really hard time finding answers for some reason. Like maybe it's different now. I don't know. Maybe there's more people who have answered that question now. But when I was trying to figure this out a couple of years ago, I was like, Google's not helping me. Like what do I do? So.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, like I'm learning a lot through like YouTube tutorials, but I've definitely learned other crafts mostly by like books and patterns and stuff. Like for sewing, I did have my friend's older sister taught me like the basics of how to use a sewing machine and how to read a pattern. And then from there, I self-taught a lot of stuff because I was like, well, I can read a pattern. So now I can like teach myself how to do all this other random stuff. And like once in a while, I would like encounter somebody who could like teach me something else, like someone
in the wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My problem is I'm such a like visual learner. And like, not just like visual, like picture on a book, but like, yeah, I need to either be in person or a video. But like just a book, I'm like, that's not in 3D.
Yeah, it sounds like you're a kinetic learner. That's how I've heard it described.
Well, so Kelly, were you saying that you're gonna make a sweater? Like, were you making your first sweater, or
I would like to make a sweater, but I haven't decided. Because I need a pattern that has video help.
Well, I can send you the like the video that I used that was a very like step-by-step tutorial, and then it also has a pattern if you want. And then I thought that was very helpful. It's a very simple like raglan sweater.
Yeah, you can send me that if they have videos. Like, because I was looking at. Like this book, I like a lot of the sweaters, but I'm like, no, I can't do it if it doesn't have videos. And then the company, or not company, but like the pattern maker that made my first hat, they have a sweater, and I think they have some videos, but it's not like step by step. It just is like, oh, well, this is how to do the sleeve or whatever.
Yeah. I have enjoyed like the first sweater I made. The pattern designer is Darling Jador. And I really liked that it had specific links to techniques or steps that weren't like immediately apparent. Like they don't have like it's not quite like a step-by-step in that you see somebody make an entire sweater in the videos, but they'll be like, here is a really in-depth tutorial on German short rows. And I was like, great, because I've never done those before. So
yeah. Like you guys are talking about German short rows. I'm like, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, go ahead. No, mine's like, it's fine. Go ahead.
I'm looking for the video right now so I can send it to you. But the one that I followed was very much like a step-by-step tutorial. Like you're just watching her make the sweater. There are a couple spots where she'll kind of go like, and then you just like knit to the next section. So we'll come back at that point.
Yeah.
But it is very step by step, and I found it very easy to follow. This is reminds me though, I just recently saw like a video or like a reel or something where they were talking about a difference in like the knitting community and the crocheting community, because crocheting has a lot of, it's really easy to find free patterns, and there are a lot of step-by-step tutorials for crochet, whereas knitting, it's harder to find free patterns. And even when they have videos, it's much more like what you were saying, Kara, where it's like, here's a video to explain a technique. It is not step-by-step how to make this specific item.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's interesting. That's a different approach to like how to like teach things.
Yeah.
I don't even mind paying, like, if I found a pattern for a sweater and you had to pay in order to get to like their specific videos, I would be fine with that. I just like, there's so much stuff I don't understand. Like, I don't know anything about like sleeves or like how to, like, there's some ones where like you do the front and then you do the back and then you sew it together, and I'm like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah. The other thing I was gonna say, and like, I'm sure you already know this, Kelly, but I have to be a like craft mom about it. Don't feel like you have to do a sweater before you're like feeling good as a crafter. Like, I was knitting for years and years before I even attempted to make garments. And so even though, like, I mean, Huck is already on her second sweater, which is amazing. But you don't need to feel like if you can't make a sweater, you're not really a knitter, or you're not like fulfilling your potential as like a crafter or something. So, and like I said, I know you know that, but I always like to remind people of stuff like that. Cause I've talked about before, I was very like slow to try new things in the beginning. Like it was years before I tried making socks. It was years before I tried making a sweater, and yeah, just wanted to re-emphasize that. This goes for everybody in the comments too.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like just the concept of people being like, oh, I'm not a real anything with crafting if they're like doing the craft. Like that's silliness. Like, yeah. I mean, I know people, not that people are silly for experiencing that, but I think like the concept of people treating people as like, oh, if you don't do this specific thing, then you're not like really part of this community, or you're not really a crafter. It's the same nonsense with like reading. There's some things where you're not a real reader, and it's like, I mean, I'm pretty sure if they're reading a book, they're a reader.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and even stuff where it's like, you know, I've seen very experienced crafters discussing, and this was in like, I think it was on like Craft Snark or something. So obviously it's going to be like complaining about stuff, and I totally get that. But sometimes the way they talk about people who do more straightforward projects kind of bugs me, because they'll be like, the sort of tone will be like, you have no business having a knitting YouTube channel if all you make are these like basic scarves and blah, blah, blah. And I don't like that. I don't think that's true. I think it's like this weird kind of like gatekeeping almost, where it's like, if you're not doing something that is like visually, I don't know, fancy or more impressive, like if you're not using at least 6 different kinds of stitches, or if you're not doing color work yet, then like you have no business sort of like talking about your craft. I don't know. Like, I can see why it would be really annoying if somebody was like charging a huge amount of money for patterns they wrote that are essentially like just basics that you could get for free. I could get that, but I just don't like how people will sometimes, I don't know, talk about the complexity of the project being indicative of how much somebody is a crafter, or how good they are, or like, I don't know, anything like that. I don't like it.
Really, if you're making videos, one, you can just decide, anybody can post videos, no matter what level of any craft, and it'll just be like, whether people want to watch them. But like, I want to watch beginner ones, you know, right now, because I am a beginner. Like, I don't want to only watch hard projects right now.
Right.
So you want a variety.
I think also like different types of like creators provide different things, because I know there are lots of people who want to watch like someone who hasn't been doing this very long and they're very new to it too, because it's encouraging to see somebody else who is like at the same stage or maybe just a little ahead of them to be like, oh, I can do that. And not like, well, this person's been knitting for like 20 years and does it professionally, so like I'm never going to be like that, you know?
Yeah. And like the people they were talking about, it's not like they were doing like tutorial content and acting like they were an expert and really they weren't. It was like, this was just like a chill, like, here's what I'm knitting. I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way. Like the way people were discussing that. Like,
I mean, I think that there are some things like, I recently saw some videos where people were talking about how, like, you know, people gotten really into making stuff out of like resin and like epoxy.
Yes.
And stuff. And then there are a lot of people who do put out like tutorial videos, but don't put any of the safety stuff into, like, they don't even know that there's safety stuff, or they're like, well, technically you're supposed to wear like gloves, but I just never do because it's so much more difficult. And then like, that stuff is really dangerous. You're supposed to have like a full respirator and like have gloves. Like, you're not supposed to have like contact with it, because there are like serious problems, health problems you can get from interacting with like resin and epoxy before it's cured. And so people who are like new to it and like putting out stuff without the safety information like that, I can see a problem with.
Yes.
But like something like knitting, it's like, there's nothing dangerous about it other than like, are you encouraging people to eat the yarn? Like, what?
Yeah.
Or you're encouraging people to go and steal other people's patterns and put them as your own. Like, there's not like
but
there's unethical things maybe, but like not like dangers. Or like if you bought a book and you're like, I'm going to do this pattern step by step and I'm going to show you a video, that's probably unethical. But like, but if you're just be like, look and see what I made, and I'm going to show it to you at like the beginning and then halfway through and at the end, like, you're not giving away like how the pattern that you paid for or whatever, but you're just sharing your craft.
Yeah. And it's like, even for like paid patterns that are more on the simple side, it's like, okay, but there can still be value. Like, there are like, one of the like creators that I saw criticized for this, like, I can get like some of the complaints. They're like, well, you know, she's talking about what she's making, but like, she never, like, it's always just like updating on like a new project. Like, she's not like, we don't really see as much like what she finishes, or it's like she's always like knitting in like the same kinds of things or the same kinds of colors. And I can understand from a content perspective why that would be like less interesting, and I even agree with some of it. But like, one of the things they said was about like one of her paid patterns that she had done, which was for like these like simple sort of like wristlet things, and I don't remember how much the pattern was. It was like a few dollars, but I didn't find it like offensive to me that she was charging for something that was relatively simple, because it's like, yeah, I would like to know how to make this. I don't want to figure out how to do a thumb hole myself. Like, I want somebody who has already done it and knows it works to tell me what to do. So
I mean, also, no one's forcing people to buy the pattern. Like,
if you
don't want to pay for it, then don't.
Yeah. It's like, you're not being made to do anything about this. Like, you
yeah. People have a lot of opinions. I mean, like, I am also a person who has a lot of opinions, but I also like not those kind of opinions. Right. Times. My opinions are a lot less like about what other people should and shouldn't do.
Yeah. And even it's like, a lot of us, like myself included, is like, yes, I have like cranky opinions about things, and it's like, I don't like this thing this person does, but I'm not like, I don't know. I'm not trying to convince people that it's like bad usually.
Yeah, true. There are a lot of opinions I do keep to myself. And also, there's like this weird tendency online to like moralize all of your opinions, where it's like, well, I think this is annoying, therefore they're a bad person. And I'm like, you can just be like, I don't like it, and just end there.
Yeah.
Yep. And like, in fairness, there are definitely opinions I have where it's like, I think that this is verging into not like, you know, deeply immoral, but I'm like, I do think this is kind of like messed up or wrong, and I can see how other people would disagree with that. So like, there are definitely things where I'm like, this could be my own bias being like, no, I think this is actually kind of bad in some ways. But a lot of times I think you can sort of recognize that difference. Yeah.
Trying to make sure. I feel like I might have dropped Stitch, but I'm going back. I'm not seeing anything, so it's probably okay.
Yeah. If you can't find the dropped Stitch, it's probably not a problem, right?
Yeah, I don't think it happened. I think I might have just had like a loose stitch and thought it was like there was like an extra one in there.
Yes.
And I just needed to tighten it. Sometimes when, as a beginning knitter, I feel like sometimes I can't just look at it and be like, what has happened here?
Right.
Just I have to pull it tighter, or is it just that like actually something fell there?
It took me a long time to even figure out what a knit or a purl stitch looked like, which is like one of the most basic things.
Yeah.
To be able to figure out what you're doing in your knitting, and for years I was trying and I just didn't understand it. So Nina said her neighbor always asked me for help with their fiber art, and then I would ask my mom if I didn't know. And now they meet up every Friday to either crochet together or work in the garden. Oh, that is lovely. We started a little chill crafting meetup. I love that.
The other day at work, we were having like a team meeting, and in our team meetings, sometimes they do like these little like kind of like a little icebreaker kind of question to just a little mini team building. And the question was not even about this, but somehow people started talking about like crafts that they had done. And so then I was like, oh, I have things to say about this. So then we had like a whole conversation about crafting, which was very fun. And there was one person, there were actually two people who were like very like, oh, I really want to get into like, I don't know, like knitting or crocheting or something. And so it was very fun to like chat about that. And I think last time we talked about this, Carrie, you were saying something about like, we were comparing crocheting and knitting, and you're like, well, knitting's more like baking and crocheting's more like cooking. And I use that analogy and like, oh, that makes so much sense. So the analogy has lived on.
I love that. I'm so glad that was helpful.
But yeah, and I was saying like, okay, next time, because you know we all work remote, but we do like a quarterly in-person day at the office. And so it's like, all right, next time we have an in-person day, we're gonna have a crafting circle during lunch. I
love that. Also, crafting circle kind of makes it sound like you're summoning something with your crafting.
Yes, it is. Oh, it's witch crafting circle.
Yeah. That's so cool. Have you guys been reading anything interesting lately?
I actually need to post my January wrap up. I finished rereading The Enchanted Forest Chronicles, which was fun. And Yeah, right now I'm actually reading a book which is like for a vlogs. I don't know how much I'm going to talk about it, but I am liking it. I'm reading a book by Sharon Shin because I am doing well. We'll see if it's one of those vlogs that ever sees the light of day. But I'm planning to do one of those. I don't know if you remember that I had those videos that were like, "Do I like this author?" And I would like read a couple books from one author to see how I felt about them. It's been like 3 years since I've done one of those, but I have been meaning to do one for Sharon Shin for like 3 years. So I finally am getting around to it, and I'm reading one of her books, and so far liking it.
Cool.
Also, though, it like tangent about those vlogs of like the do I like this author? Well, so you and I buddy read and then DNF'd Riddle Master.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. And so that was part of one of those vlogs because I was doing it for like, do I like Patricia McKillop? That is one of those videos that I still semi-regularly get comments on, and they are long comments because people are big mad that I did not like the Riddle Master series. And they're always comments that are very like, well, you just didn't really get it, or like, like the kind of comments that I read them and I'm like, you clearly have, like, this is a person who has not watched my channel. They have only watched this one video because they're making comments about like, well, the writing is very like lyrical and atmospheric, and like maybe you just don't like that kind of writing. Or they're like, well, not all magic systems have to be hard magic systems. And I'm like, I don't think you've ever watched one of my videos before.
Or maybe you just don't like that author and it's okay. Or that book. Yeah, like why is it?
And like, yeah, it's just, you know, but you know what? I hope that all of the people who are mad about it can find solace in the comments with all of the other mad people.
Yeah. Well, and it's like there are plenty of like authors or books where it's like, I think it's amazing, and sometimes when I see people give it like a negative review for specific reasons, I'm like, well, I don't agree with those. I don't think that's true. But I'm like, I'm not gonna watch that video. Like, I just like, why? I don't understand why people like deliberately inflict that kind of irritation on themselves. Like, I don't get it. Nina remembers watching.
I don't get it either. Yeah, I like have some self-preservation. Like,
yeah, I've been reading a lot this year so far. Like, I think doing the short stack readathon this year was helpful for me because I ended up reading 14 things.
Nice.
Which is way more. Last year, I think I was lucky to read like 3 to 4 things every month. So that was really good. I continued in the Olivia Atwater series. So I read 10,000 Stitches. Is that what that second one's called? And that was good.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you finally like pushed me to read that. You've been talking about it for so long, and I'm like, okay, finally I will read the series.
Yeah. Lovingly peer pressured you to read it.
Getting there. And then right now I'm reading Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia.
I still have to read that one.
Yeah, I'm very much at the beginning. I think I'm only like 40 pages in, so still getting into it. But I think it was actually Hannah's review, because sometimes once I start a book, I'm like, I'm going to read some reviews to see if I'm correct about the vibe of this book, so I know for sure I want to keep going. And Hannah compared it to T. Kingfisher, and I thought that was really interesting because she's like, it's a more pragmatic main character in a fantasy world, and that it seems all cozy, but then has like some moments of like violence or scary things. And I'm like, oh, so that made me even more excited to continue, because I was worried I was not going to be as interested, but I was like, I've never heard that comparison before, but maybe a lot of people, like, I think Hannah is like us, has read a lot of like older T. Kingfisher and not just like the stuff that's come out last year.
Yeah.
So that is helpful, because now it makes me more excited to continue.
I also remember that review from Hannah. I think like it is a good sort of setting my expectations thing for me as well, because I kept hearing people, like a lot of people compare that to Olivia Atwater's series, which obviously I'm obsessed with. And so I was kind of wary because I'm like, I try not to pay too much attention to comp titles, and especially for obviously like favorites. So I was like, I really don't know that this is going to be what I want from this book. When somebody says that, when they're like, this is like Olivia Atwater, I'm like, to me, that says very specific things about what it's going to be and what I want. And I think Hannah's review, if I'm remembering correctly, like she was like, I see why people say that, but it's not really like that feeling.
Yeah.
And I think that's good to know. So I'm hoping that when I do eventually get to it, I can enjoy it on its own terms.
Well, I wonder if people comp it like that because it is like set in that kind of older English setting.
Yeah.
Like this is England, but there's fairies.
Right. My like, I guess, biggest concern about the book is I'm a little worried that I'm not going to like the specific kind of grumpy that the main character is.
The main character or the love interest, like the woman?
Either of them, really.
Because I haven't even met the love interest yet, so that's why I've heard a lot of people say that he's pretty like self-centered and narcissistic. So I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna like. Am I gonna like him? We'll see.
Yeah.
But then, like, I don't know. It could go either way. Because if they are compared to Olivia Atwater, I think that her main, like her male love interests, aren't like perfect little, like, you know, not like the sweetest man in the world. Like the first one, he's pretty grumpy.
Elias is kind of a jerk. So
yeah, and then the fairy, now I can't think of his name, Blackthorn.
Yeah,
he's also kind of not like, I mean, he's not grumpy, but he's like too like, you know, everything's gonna be fun and like we're gonna like. Because
he's so sweet, but he does not understand very basic. Like he genuinely is trying to help, but his version of trying to help is like really dangerous.
Yeah, sometimes. Like me, like causing your boss to have like a panic attack doesn't help you. Like I don't understand. Like I totally doesn't need to help you. It's like no, like my boss's attitude directly affects me, so don't.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're like perfect men, but I don't know. I haven't met him yet, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kara, I remember that I had to tell you, my mom read The Unraveler by Frances Hardinge, and she liked it. Although she also said that she would be very interested in a video that's like ranking them about like how weird are these books, because she's like, I want to read more, but I'm not really sure about these.
Perfect. Your mom is going to motivate me to actually do that video. I should dedicate, like, this one goes out to Huck's mom.
Which one is the closest to Gullstruck Island? Because that was great.
Speaking of, I got my mom to read Gullstruck Island, and she really liked it. I think her favorite is still, she hasn't read that many, but I think her favorite is still Island of Whispers. But Gullstruck Island is like my favorite, and so I'm glad that she at least, like, she definitely enjoyed it. And she really loved Hathin, which I'm like, that is the correct opinion. Like,
well, because I'm trying to figure out where to go next with Frances Hardinge, because the first one we read, or that I finished, was the one that has two titles, the one with the well, the wishing well.
Oh, yes. Verdigris Deep is the original title that I think is way better.
Yeah, I read that one and I didn't love it. Like I liked it, okay, but I didn't love it because I think it was too set in our world.
It's way more contemporary, yeah.
And then I read Gullstruck Island and I loved it because it's like a whole different world and I loved it. But then I also tried, is it Fly by Night?
Those are, I don't recommend those for like near the beginning of your Frances Hardinge experience.
Yeah. I was having a hard time, even though that's like a new world. I was like, I am just not loving these characters and I'm not getting into this world. So
yeah.
So I'm like, what do I do next? Like, where do I, like, I own Skin Full of Shadows and The Lie Tree and A Face Like Glass.
Okay, so A Skinful of Shadows and The Lie Tree are much more like historical fantasy. Like they're set in very specific times. Like it's not just like historical vibes. And I know that you don't read a ton of historical fiction, so I would maybe wait for if you're in the mood for something more historical for those. Of the two, I think The Lie Tree would be in a way more approachable because it's around the time that like Darwin's like Origin of the Species was coming out. So I feel like that's like a time period that we know a lot more about, because A Skinful of Shadows is during I think it's the English Civil War, and we don't learn a lot about that in the US. At least I certainly didn't in school. And so even though I liked A Skinful of Shadows, I don't know that it would be as like approachable. Yeah. I think, and I know you didn't mention having this one, you haven't read Unraveler, right?
No. And I mean, I can get it from the library. I don't have to buy it.
Right. I think Unraveler could be a good one to go next, because that one is also a fantasy, so there is another world. And it is very creative and interesting, but it's not as weird as some of her others. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that one might be, especially since you loved Gullstruck Island, I feel like maybe Unraveler could be a good way to go.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll get that one for... Is that one more middle grade or more young adult, would you say? Like age group?
I think young adult.
Okay. I was like wondering if I should read it for middle grade March, but I could also just read it in March and not be middle grade. It's fine.
Right. And the thing is, like, I think technically, so like Frances Harding considers herself a like children's author or like a middle grade author, but her books get shelved all over the place. So I don't even know necessarily that, like, I don't know that Unraveler is actually considered young adult. Like, yeah, I have no idea. So
yeah, it's hard when they can cross over.
Yeah, which I like. I tend to enjoy books that really like straddle, different categories or genres or age ranges. Yeah. But it makes it sometimes a lot harder to like recommend them, because a lot of people, they like want to know that stuff, and I'm like, well, but that's not the point.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter for me, but I have found that like when I'm thinking about like stuff that I would want to read with my daughter, that like some things are not like, she's not ready for that.
Yeah.
So maybe I wouldn't read that one with her. But did you ever read Illuminations by T. Kingfisher?
Not yet. I'm excited for it. But
I read it last month and I loved it. I'm really surprised that it hasn't like had anybody talking about it, I feel like. I know it was one of her, self-published, but it was like right before she started like publishing. And I wondered if it was because it is kind of meant for a young audience, but she didn't put it in her real name. So, but it is definitely a middle grade book, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And I had my daughter read it and she loved it. So I was like, but you can't read everything by T. Kingfisher. You can only read the things that I tell you were allowed to read by this author.
Yeah.
Because she also read, right before that, she had read Castle Hangnail, which is under her real name.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely, I don't feel Unraveler would be one of Frances Harding's books that is like most accessible or most appropriate for younger readers. Like there's some parts in it, or there's some things it deals with that are maybe a little mature for your daughter, but obviously that's like your call. But
yeah, well, and she's hard because she's 10, so sometimes she can handle, and she can handle a lot of serious topics, but then it's like finding that, because there are sometimes when she's like, oh, this book scared me and was too much, and so then it's like, but she's asking me, she's so specific in her recommendations, because she keeps asking me, Mom, put another audiobook on my thing, and I'm like, okay, what kind do you want? And she's like, I want it to be like slightly fantastical, a mystery, all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, but not scary, because I like a lot of ones that are more have like that creepy factor. Like I would have been like, oh, you should read The Night Gardener, but I think that would scare her.
Yeah.
Because we read what is it called? The Wretched Water Park by Kirsten White. Mm-hmm. And that one is like silly scary. You know what I mean? Like more Goosebumps like.
Mm-hmm.
And so she liked that one, but then I'm like, well, some of mine are more like scary, not silly scary.
Yeah, like I feel like the Small Spaces series would maybe be too scary.
Yeah, which is why because at first I was like, do you want to read about sentient scarecrows that are chasing people? And she's like, no.
Why would you think that, Mom?
I'm like, well, or like The Girl in White. I had just finished that one and I was like, would you want one with a ghost in it? Like, and she said, no, I don't want that. So
yeah.
I'm trying
I will have to think about those requests. I'll see if I can come up with some recommendations.
Yeah, so it's like very hard. Mara had just DNF'd a series that was like a middle grade mystery series. And I recommended that one to her because like the reason Mara stopped reading it was that she said it was just too middle grade. And so like the mysteries were too easy. And I'm like, well, maybe that's perfect then. Yeah. Because she said the writing was still good and it was still like a quality book, but definitely more for the target audience.
Also, like, I mean, Mara's like a big mystery reader. So like why I don't know. Like this book for kids is intended for kids.
Yeah.
Not a fan. Like
so that's why I was like, well, then my daughter will probably like it because she doesn't know. She hasn't read like a million Agatha Christie books. She doesn't know these things coming. Like we read that Water Park one and each of the book I didn't read the rest of them with her, but I let her spoil them for me because it was just too silly for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, great for you. I just don't want to read them. Like, but you could tell me about them and share with me. And I listened with her at part of the second book, and just listening to it for 5 minutes, I'm like, that person's a vampire. And then she comes to me towards the end and she's like, Mom, there's a vampire in the book. And I was like, well, yeah.
Yep.
I got that early on.
Yeah. I also, my like very lukewarm take on mysteries, which I don't even read that many of them, but it's that I don't think, for me at least, the most important thing is like, I never saw that coming. It's like, there's even like a certain way where like, if an author is good at like just giving you enough, clues and setting you up for like the reveal and everything, there's even a way in some books where like it almost heightens the anticipation when I know what's coming. Because I'm like waiting to see, like, all right, how is this going to go? When are they going to do something about this? Like, there are definitely times where I figure it out like way too early, and I'm like, this isn't fun anymore. But like for the most part, I don't know. Like, one of the Agatha Christie books that I read, I'm like, yeah, I see how this was a really dramatic plot twist, but it's annoying. Like,
yeah, but
I didn't see it coming because it was kind of
out of left field.
Yeah, like I guess that's a little unfair because like it was a good twist in that like writers hadn't really done this before her as far as I know, but yeah, it's not like, I think a lot of times when people are like, this book is so good, like I didn't see the ending coming, and then if I read it I'm like, well, that's because it makes no sense. Like,
yeah, I don't like it when it doesn't make when it's just like, well, of course I didn't guess that because that's ridiculous. Like then
exactly.
Then to me it doesn't really like seem. It seems lazy writing instead of good writing because it's like, well, they just made up the most ridiculous thing they could think of to just be like, well, I don't know how to end this, so I'm just gonna like do a random thing. And
which that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, I'd rather feel like there's little things along the way that maybe you didn't catch on to, but that you were like, oh, I see where that comes from.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons that I really hate the unreliable narrator trope, is because I feel like that is really lazy, where it's like, you of course you can surprise the reader if you lie to them the whole time. Like, I don't think you get points as an author for that. Like, I don't know. And there are exceptions, like there are characters where, like they have certain like memory loss or things like that, where I find it like interesting and like engaging and it makes sense. So as with most things, there are exceptions to it, but like in general, I just feel like it's such a cop-out to have like a main character where it's like, well, yeah, if you lie to me the whole time, I'm gonna be surprised. Like,
yeah,
you don't get credit for that.
I think that's why I think I have moved away from thrillers and more into mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't need the trick. I would rather have interesting characters, a like small town where you're getting to know all the different like people in it, and like discovering who is the one that did the murder or whatever. Whereas opposed to the thriller where it's often like just people lying to you, and then all of a sudden, oh, here's what happened. It's like, well, that's not that interesting.
Right, which like one of the reasons that I have been really enjoying this sort of ongoing trend of like Jane Austen themed murder mysteries, like I will sometimes see reviews where it's like, I immediately knew who the killer was. And I'm like, okay, but I feel like the point of these books usually is like, I'm hanging out with Jane Austen characters and they are also solving a murder. That's fun. And especially if the author is really good at writing these characters that we know and love. And it can be really fun to see them interact with each other from different books. Like there's all these other things that I love about them that is not related to like, oh, I this is the most mind-blowing mystery I've ever read. Like that's not, I feel like, what it's trying to do.
Yeah.
So. I think I am actually ready to bind off this part.
Ooh.
I've rechecked my measurements like multiple times because I'm like, I don't want to do it when I'm not supposed to. But I think I'm okay.
Where you do section by section? Is that?
No, it's not like one where you have to like seam a bunch of pieces together, thankfully. But it is like it's a bottom up sweater, and so you like knit the body and arms together basically for a big chunk, and then when you separate them, this is one of the ones where you like knit the front part and the back part separately, and then you are going to like connect those, but it's not like you like sew a bunch of pieces together necessarily. But it's not a seamless one either. I am not describing it very well, but
that's okay. I probably wouldn't understand it anyway, so
no. Well, it also doesn't help that I'm like not doing a good job of like actually, I don't even know what if they have a word for that kind of construction where it's like it's not seamless because you do have to seam things, but I don't think it's one of the ones where like you would call it whatever they call it, where it's like pieces that you like sewing patterns, you know, like those you always have like a bunch of pieces that you sew together. I say, not being a sewer. Like,
sorry, I'm being quiet, but Merlin is not happy right now. It's very windy outside, and he's afraid of like thunder and lightning, and I think he thinks the sound of the wind is thunder, and then our lights just flickered, so I think he thought that was lightning. So he was running around with his hackles up a minute ago, which is why I left, and then I'm trying to get him to like settle down on the couch next to me.
Aww.
So he's not feeling good right now.
Poor guy. It's like, I don't like this weather.
Yeah, he just doesn't like weird noises that he can't explain, you know? That's very sensitive to noises.
Yeah.
Well, don't we all? Like,
yeah. I too also just like realizing vacuum cleaners.
Also, I'm realizing that I think this yarn that I got, the one that I'm using now is like very slightly different green than the one that I had before, but they're from the same dye lot.
Oh, interesting.
But now that I'm like in a much brighter light, I can see that this one is more vibrant. So it's like very similar. Maybe nobody else would notice, but I can see a clear difference, to me at least, where I started this new ball of yarn.
At least it could look like a very slightly two-toned sweater, you know, like it at least would be in a straight line.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know. I did have to buy yarn from two different dye lots, but I split them up so that I would know like which one's from which. Right. And I am planning to and like there isn't a huge difference between the two of them, but I was thinking of doing like alternating.
Yeah.
To kind of like blend it a little bit better, but I didn't think I was going to have to do that just yet because these were from the same dye lot.
Yeah.
Like I was planning to just use ones from one dye lot for the yolk so that I didn't have to like worry about alternating while I was doing increases, and then start mixing in the other ones once I got into like the body. And then like, yeah, the body might be a slightly different color than the yolk, but I was like, maybe it'll just look like it's on purpose.
Yes.
Is the yolk this part?
Yeah, it's like this. It makes like a semicircle. Like I can show you. I mean, this is on needles right now, but like, yeah, like this is the yolk that it's gonna be right
so it's
here.
like what's under the collar.
Yeah, so it's like collar, yolk, and you just kind of are increasing until it gets to like a certain point, and then you split it for, at least in this type of pattern, you split for sleeves. So like where the raglan increases are, I would then like put these stitches on hold because these are the sleeves on each side, and then you just connect the body and you make the column of the body, and then you go back and pick up stitches to make the sleeves. But yeah, so the yoke is just like this part.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just also learning, the words, because one of the sweater things I was looking at, I'm like, what does it mean by that?
Yeah.
Making sure I understand, because it was like I was looking at the measurements, and it's like the chest circumference, body length. I understand what those things are, but it's like yoke depth.
Like, yeah, so yoke depth will mean like how long the yoke goes, and that determines where the armpit starts. And that's why like I made my yoke too long in the first one, so the armpit starts really low. So you just have to decide, like, you don't want it to be too high because then it's going to be like tight on your arm. But I think the pattern that I did with my first one, and I sent the video to you on Instagram, I think she says that she tries to go for like 2 inches below the armpit to like start to like end the yoke, and that's usually like a comfortable length. But you can kind of like decide for yourself where you want it to, depending on how much like space you want.
I think I need to measure a sweater I already own.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people
say that is actually right. They say that is actually the best way to choose a size for something you're making, is like find something that you really like how it fits and do that rather than trying to measure your body.
Yeah, because I'm very picky about, like, I'll read like measurements online when I'm buying something online. I'll be like, oh, well, that are my measurements, and then I get it and I'm like, it all just feels like so tight and like, I don't like the way it fits or falls. And so I'm like, I should just take a sweater, because I also like to layer. If I have a sweater, I want to be able to wear a long sleeve shirt underneath it, because we get down very low here, so I want to be able to layer under a sweater. So I can't have the sleeve, because sometimes sweaters make the sleeves too tight, and it's like, need to have a shirt underneath it, especially if there's holes in the sweater.
Oh yeah, I really don't like layering shirts under sweaters. I mean, I understand, especially if you're like in a very cold climate, that makes more sense. But I get hot easily, and I'm not in such a cold area, and I just don't like the feeling of too many layers sometimes. But I always see people saying, like, especially if you're using, well, really any kind of fiber, you should be layering like, like a cotton layer or something underneath to like protect the sweater from like, your body or something. I'm just like, but I don't like it. I don't want to.
You do. Yeah.
Well, I could see if you're using like some people say that too about wool, if it's like an itchy wool.
Yeah.
Because there are some wools that I'm like, well, I don't want that against my skin.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Which is why I have to like touch everything in the yarn shop to make sure.
You got to stroke them to know.
Yeah. Except for I can't take my kid, because last time I took my
Right.
7-year-old in, and it's like I took my eyes off her for a second, and she's got one of the skeins or hanks or whatever, and she's just like unrolling it. I'm like, stop! Like, I don't want to buy all the like $20-some wool yarn in this place. Like, stop touching me. So she's not allowed anymore.
Yeah, you have lost yarn shop privileges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that stuff is expensive. Like, I get it.
For sure. Yeah. I really, at some point, I've never tried using mohair, and I have a feeling that it'll be too itchy for me, but I do want to try it at some point. So someday I'm gonna have to like buy a skein of mohair and like knit up a little something just to like see.
Right.
Because I love the fluffy look, but it just yeah.
You could even do one of those like mini skeins that are like, 10 grams or 20 grams or something, and do like a headband or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like what I'd have to do though is make like kind of like a dicky, where it's just like a collar and like a little bit of the yoke, because that's really where I'm worried that it like on my neck and chest, I feel like that's where it would be too itchy.
Yeah. Did you say to make a headband? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, I mentioned that as like a possible small project to kind of test if you like a yarn feeling.
Yeah. Because that's what I think I got for my daughter's headband, because you're supposed to do 2 strands together, and it's this like is a DK, and then this I think is like a mohair.
Mm-hmm.
So then
a lot of people really like it. So I think like it's gonna look beautiful.
What is the label?
It's Rowan.
Oh yeah, Kid Silk will be mohair because it's kid.
Yeah, so it's like, oh yeah, it says right here, made with super kid mohair, 70% mohair, 30% silk, and this one is, I think, 100% wool, super wash. And so like this is for a headband, and you're 100% wool, and you're supposed to like do them together, which I've never done 2 strands together. So that's the other thing I'm going to be trying.
Yeah.
Because I think that it would be hard to do mohair by itself, because it's so like...
Yeah, almost all the patterns I have ever seen have been that with something.
Yeah.
I saw somebody making a scarf that was supposed to be like really like light, and they were just using mohair, and I was like, how do you even see where it is? It's like...
Yeah.
It's invisible.
It's like you're knitting a cloud. I don't know.
Brave. I feel. I know. I haven't made anything with it, but I have like been testing out different like brushed alpaca yarns that are supposed to they're kind of the same idea as mohair, but they're much softer.
Yeah.
But it's harder to find, like there are fewer of them, and so there's more limited colors for brushed alpaca.
I also
I'm doing weird things. I'm like trying to stretch my hands if I look like weird.
I have done several projects that are like knitting multiple strands. I know that's like a very common thing, and I have discovered that for me personally, I don't enjoy that experience. Like it's not, I don't know, it's not like fun the way that knitting usually is for me. So what I will usually do is I find a yarn that adds up to the thickness of like the 2 that they're talking about holding together. And especially like there's like certain constructions or certain fiber blends where it kind of gives it that like fuzziness to like mimic the look and a little bit of the feel of mohair. So that's like usually what I will sort of adapt.
When I was mostly crocheting, and I would sometimes double up yarn, usually it was not like two different yarns. It was like I just wanted the same yarn but thicker, so I would just double up that yarn. But usually what I would do is I would wrap them into a ball together so it still felt like it was one strand instead of having to pull from two separate balls of yarn. And I feel like if I had a project that I was doing that with, I probably would do that again, because that always just seemed more, it was so much easier to just have one ball of yarn to have to deal with.
Yeah.
My plan though for this sweater actually is, so I really wanted something that had like a little bit of that fuzziness to it, a little halo. But I could not find like a fuzzy yarn in this green that I wanted. And so, but eventually I figured out, and I'm going to try this out and see if it works, but I think it will, that this yarn, you can like brush the surface and it fluffs up a little bit. Because I saw people doing this with mohair, because what they would do, which seems wild to me, is they would take, you know, those like pet brushes that are like wires, like wiry.
Yes.
And they would brush them. And I'm like, I don't understand how you're not just ripping your stitches doing this. But they would brush the mohair to like fluff it up. And I was like, I wonder if you can do that. Like, it wouldn't work on superwash, I'm sure. But this isn't a superwash yarn. And this is also 50% alpaca. And so I'm like, I feel like it would do that. And so I had made like a little swatch of it. And I tried brushing it, not with one of those spiky brushes, because that I still don't understand how that doesn't just rip up the stitches. But I got just like a stiff bristle brush and just kind of like brushed the surface, and it fluffed up a little bit. Not so much like mohair, but it gave it like a little bit of a halo, and it doesn't change the color of the yarn because I'm not adding anything to it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try it and hope that I don't like mess up my sweater.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you're felting it. Almost.
No, because felting is like binding the fibers together. This is lifting the fibers up and like making them fluffy on the surface. I don't know if that explanation made any sense.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So I actually got the front half done.
Woo!
Yeah.
Cool.
So I get to do the same on the back, and then it's just sleeves. I'm very excited.
I am such a slow knitter. That's why I am a little worried about doing a sweater, because I feel like it'll take me forever.
They are definitely just bigger projects.
Yeah, it's just larger for sure, but
because like
knitting is kind of inherently a slow craft though, so
yeah.
Well, I don't mind taking a long time. It was like when I did the hat class though, I feel like they should have had the two classes 2 weeks apart, because basically the first week we just learned how to do it. So like we had to have the ribbing done, but in the class, you know, we're learning how to cable, we're learning how to do the leaning left or whatever, the left twist or whatever that's called, because there was like a twist section at the end, the whole cable. And then it was like because we're learning, we only probably did like a few rows, and then she's like, okay, now finish the rest of your body and be ready to decrease when you come back. And I'm like, that is 1 week to finish the whole main part of the hat. And I had other stuff going on, and so I got back to the class, and I was like, I'm not ready to decrease yet, but I'm sure I will soon. I only had like a few more rows, and I'm just so slow that it took me almost the entire class to get to where everybody else was at the beginning. And then I'm like, now teach me how to do the things to decrease in the last half hour of the class.
Yeah.
So, and then I didn't finish the hat because I didn't have that whole like 2 hours of the class to do the decreasing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she was like, just make sure you finish your hat and come in and talk to me if you you know, have trouble. Uh-oh. I lost my stitch marker. Okay. I started talking and I didn't realize I had dropped my stitch marker.
I was thinking of getting like a knitting journal, you know, like I've seen some people keep knitting journals, and I was thinking of doing that, like just to kind of keep track of what I am making, and like sometimes if I make like changes to things, or I'm like, oh, this worked well, or something like that. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That might be interesting.
It does make sense because, like, I know that happens to me when I quilt, is that because I'm more familiar with quilting, I change up patterns a lot. Mm-hmm. And I'll make them different sizes, like, because maybe this one is meant for a throw, but I really want it to be a twin size quilt. And so sometimes you can just add another row, but then other times it doesn't work. So you have to actually increase the like size of the squares or whatever inside the pattern, or the triangles. And then I don't make clear enough notes. And so then if I ever want to come back and do it again, I'm like,
yep,
I don't remember what I did.
I do that a lot. Like I have thought multiple times about doing a similar kind of like knitting journal, because I do the exact same thing, where if like I make adjustments, or even stuff where it's like for socks and like using a certain size needle for a pattern and a yarn combination, if I don't write that down, I go to make the other sock and I'm like, I don't even know what I did. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or like, yeah. Like this one, if I ever wanted to make it again, being like, okay, I did this many German short rows because that's not in the pattern.
Yes.
And also, like, I don't think it'll change the pattern too much, but this pattern does the sleeves before the body, and I don't want to do that. I'm going to do the body and then the sleeves. Because I think we talked about this last time, where I was like, I mean, I know people talk about Sleeve Island, but to me, the body is much more tedious. Yes. And the sleeves, I'm like, small circumference, I'm zooming, I'm almost done. Let's get this finished.
You can like whip through 4 or 5 rows in the time it takes you to get around once.
I know, the body feels so much more tedious. And so I would much rather end on the sleeves because it feels like there's so much more momentum.
Yes. Yeah, like most of that's so weird, because most of the patterns I've seen also have been like you finish with the sleeves, which I prefer also.
Yeah.
Not to mention, if you're doing any kind of like, I don't know, anything sort of different for the top of the sweater, or even like the bottom hem, if there's like a different pattern or like color work or something, I kind of feel like I prefer to do that near the beginning. And finish with something that is usually like less complicated. Like you just knit. You just knit for the sleeve.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, like I did a different ribbing on this. Right now, my favorite ribbing, I love doing like, I don't really like 1x1 ribbing that much.
Me neither.
I feel like it's so easily looks messy. And so what I did for this was 2x1. So I did 2 knit, 1 purl. Mm-hmm. And I really like the way it turned out. And I like how that looks. And I was like, this is going to be my ribbing style until I figure out something else I like better, because right now this is my favorite.
I like 2x1 as well. I also like the twisted rib. And it's partly for the look, but also I just find it more pleasant to knit, because I also hate 1x1 ribbing, mostly because I just don't find it easy to get into a rhythm with it. Like
there's something about the twisted rib that the rhythm is easier.
Yeah. Like 1x1 regular rib to me feels like the worst combination of super monotonous, but also not easy. Like not easy to just like fly through, you know? So
what is that stitch that like has that? Is it called seed stitch, where it's not ribbing but it is like you're moving back and forth?
So seed stitch it's like you basically do ribbing offset by 1 stitch, like you're alternating. I have a great example, because
interesting.
The bottom hem, if I can find it, is actually Seed Stitch. And see, this is such a dark yarn. It's like impossible to see. But there we go. So this is the Seed Stitch, and it's like bumpy. And I actually really like how it looks as like edging for things because it contrasts so nicely with like the smooth knit. But yeah, so for Seed Stitch, usually I think you cast on, is it an even or odd? I think odd number of stitches. And so you do like knit, purl all the way across. And then when you do the next row, you do purl, knit. So you are doing the opposite. And that's what gives you that cool little like offset, chunky like look.
Yeah. Because I was watching my sister-in-law was making a scarf for somebody for Christmas. And she was doing seed stitch. So she was alternating. And she made it look so fast and easy the way because for me I'm like move my yarn to the front, move my yarn to the back, and she was just like whipping it back and forth and going, and I was like, how do you do that? Because I would have liked to have been able to do that for ribbing, but she's like, yeah, seed stitch is just my stitch, I do it all the time, and I'm like, what?
I think that that's like there are just some that you like click with better, or it also can depend on the style of like holding your yarn. And like I know there's all these like styles that are supposed to be much more efficient, and maybe if it starts like hurting my hands to do the way that I do it, maybe I will look into those. But I don't really, for me personally, I don't feel like I want to change the way I knit to do it faster, yeah. It's not the vibe that we're going for.
I don't want to change to go faster, but I do want to learn how she does that back and forth, because I just remember ribbing. When I had to rib 1-1, I was like, this is torturous.
It is. It's such a pain. Yeah.
So I would like to just watch her and be like, how are you doing this?
Yes. Teach me your ways.
For some reason, even doing like 2x1 or 2x2 ribbing just feels so much better than doing 1x1, and I don't know why.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think because even though you are still having to switch back and forth, it isn't so constant as it is with 1x1, because that is literally after every stitch. You have to flip everything. So yeah. I think I need to hop off in just a couple minutes. How would we feel about winding down the sprints? I know we didn't quite go as long as we usually do, so
we've still been here for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, that's actually I need to walk Merlin soon. Maybe if he goes outside and realizes that there's no thunder, he'll calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
You shaking, babe? Oh, he is not happy with this wind.
Yeah. If it's good for Merlin, then we have to do it. Okay, so anything you guys want to mention that's coming up on your channel? This is me reminding myself to do the links after after this is posted, because I usually try and do that before and I forgot this time. But please, everybody, check out Kelly and Huck if you haven't already. Thank you guys for hanging out with us, or thank you if you watch this back later. I know we get people who do that. And yeah, I know I've gotten a couple comments about like people wishing they could join, but it's like in the complete wrong time zone for them because they're like in Australia. So I don't know if we want to possibly in the future try one that is like more nighttime for us, which might be better for them. But anyway, we will discuss that later. So thank you guys. Thank you, Callie and Huck, as always. And yeah, did you have anything you wanted to mention, or?
I have no plan for future.
I mean, sometime I'm going to post a January wrap up. I filmed it. I just have to edit it. So, you know.
Me too. I filmed it last week and I still haven't edited it.
Damn, it's been a week and I'm like, okay.
I love that idea. I'm sorry, what, Huck?
But the video, I only wrapped up 4 books, so it's not even that long. I just need to edit it.
Yep. I love the idea, Kelly, of that being your channel bio. I have no plan.
I know, like, I'm just kind of winging it right now. Yeah. Life is just chaotic, but
yeah. Yep. Life is lifing. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you again to everybody who hangs out with us now or later. Yeah, we will see you for another craft sprint. Huck has been really great about keeping us on our monthly like schedule so far. So all credit to her for that. But okay. We will see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.
And stream.